The statue of Sir Thomas Munro stands on Mount Road in front of the Gymkhana Club. It has been standing there for a very long period of time. It is in fact a landmark. Many people don't even know who Thomas Munro was and why there is a statue for him still standing in the middle of Chennai. Come, let us look at that history. Munro came to Madras in 1780 as a new recruit in the British Army. He then rose step by step, and by the 1820s, he had become the governor of this entire presidency. He was a man who was known to be sympathetic to Indian aspirations, and he always believed that the British had come here to help the Indians. It was a pity that a man with such foresight and such compassion should have actually died so soon. In 1827, he passed away in Andhra while travelling over there. Munro had in fact resigned his job as governor and had booked his passage to go back to England on a ship called Asia. But he was not destined to go back. He died. He was buried in a place called Gutti in Andhra, and later his body was transferred to the Church of St. Mary's in Fort St. George, where he still lies. The British in Madras decided that Munro deserved a memorial. They collected £8,000 and then decided that the memorial should be a statue. The money was remitted to Sir Francis Chantrey, who at that time was one of the most prominent sculptors in England, and he agreed to execute the commission in bronze. It was decided that the statue would be an equestrian one, and it would follow the rules of equestrian statues at that time. That is, if the person to be commemorated was a champion horse rider but had died of natural causes, the horse would be depicted with all its 4 feet on the ground. If, on the other hand, he died of war wounds but not in the battlefield, then the horse would have one leg lifted up. And then, if he had died on the battlefield, it would be a horse that would be rearing. Munro, having died of natural causes, his horse had to be depicted with all its 4 feet planted firmly on the ground. Chantrey was not very keen in sculpting an equestrian statue because his forte was to sculpt human beings and not animals. But at that time, he received a commission to sculpt an equestrian statue of King George IV. He therefore borrowed a horse from the king's stables and used the same horse as a model for the king's statue as well as for Munro's statue. It took 10 years for Chantrey to complete the commission. In 1838, the statue was finally ready. It was in 3 parts: the horse, the rider and the sword. And the whole ensemble weighed 6,000 kilograms or 6 tons. It was shipped in 3 parts to Madras and arrived here after 6 months. In those days, let's not forget that there was no harbour in this city. All ships would stop 2 miles in the sea, and a series of rafts or catamarans would go and receive passengers and goods. There is no idea as to how or in what manner the statue was offloaded and how it was brought to the city. But we do know that a public holiday was declared for 3 days so that people could witness the offloading of Munro's statue, horse and the sword, and their bringing over to the city. At the end of it, in October, the statue was erected in front of what would later be the Gymkhana Club. A pedestal was made here by the German firm of Ostader and Company, and then when raised, this became one of the most impressive landmarks in the city. Almost at once, there was a comment that the horse did not have a saddle and there were no stirrups either. Chantrey was asked, and he said that he depicted it intentionally that way, just so that people understand the skills of Munro as a horse rider. But in the city, a rumour spread, and one that continues to exist even today, that Chantrey was so shocked that he had overlooked such a simple thing as a stirrup and a saddle that he committed suicide. This is not true at all. Chantrey died of natural causes several years later in his studio in England. A bigger challenge, on the other hand, was how to sculpt Munro's face. There was only a silhouette portrait of Munro that was available, photography was non-existent, and Chantry simply had to replicate the silhouette onto the other side. He then invited people who knew Munro to come and see whether it resembled him, and when they agreed, the statue was finally shipped here. And so it remains on Mount Road, a major landmark in the city. In recent years, the question has come up, do we really need this statue? Can it not be transferred? And for that, I have only one answer. What Sir Rajagopalachari, the former Governor General of India, said. Whenever IAS officers and other government servants came to meet him, he would always tell them to remember Munro, because Munro said that it was the duty of a civil servant to serve the public and not to command or rule over them. He also remembered that Munro had predicted in 1827 that British rule in India can never be permanent, and there would come a time when the British would have to leave. And he said when they needed to leave as gracefully as possible. Munro died in 1827. India became independent in 1947, a good 120 years later, and he had had the foresight to write that. Rajaji therefore felt that the statue of Munro ought to stand where it is, and long may it remain there to teach us some basic principles of democracy. Thank you so much. If you like this episode, please like this channel, comment below it, share it, and subscribe to it. And I promise to soon be back with you with further episodes. Bye for now.